Hello, I'm Rico Caviglia, and this is your Ageless Body Self-Care Guide, your operations manual for your body and for your mind. And the title of today's session is A True Self-Care System. And you know, this whole project, it's all about, it's a self-care guide. It's how to take the best possible care of yourself, of your body and your mind, so you can be your best self and you can go out into the world and use your talents and abilities and live your purpose and help to make a positive difference in the world, so we can create a more peaceful and prosperous and healthy and joyful world for everybody involved, you know. So this is going to be a really interesting session. We have a great expert guest today. His name is Satyam. He's the founding director and lead instructor of Renaissance Yoga, and he has pursued and completed his yoga teacher training in India, and he has been practicing yoga and meditation on a daily basis for 30 years and has been teaching yoga for over 25 years. So Satyam, thanks so much for being here.
A pleasure to be with you here today, Rico.
Yeah, thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. So first of all, let's talk about what is really a true definition of yoga, because that's what we're talking about today. Because yoga really is a true, complete mind, body, and spiritual wellness system. It's all about self-care. But tell us, give us your definition of yoga and tell us why it is a complete mind, body, and spiritual self-care guide.
Sure. Well, the philosophical definition of yoga is making a link between unit and cosmic, between individual and some greater entity. But the way of the yogi is to lead a very regulated, disciplined lifestyle. And that encompasses all different aspects of life, from one's sleep to one's food habits, to one's exercise routine, style of breathing, the thoughts we think, everything. There's nothing outside the scope. There's nothing that goes on in the day that is outside the scope of the yogic practitioner.
So it's a true, really, it's not a religion. It's a philosophy. It's a way of life. It's a way of life and living our best self and taking the best care of our physical body and our emotional state, and then advancing on our spiritual path.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's a practice, and it's a practice that encompasses the physical sphere, the psychic sphere, and the spiritual sphere. So in the physical sphere, there's the yoga postures that help promote wellness for the body. They're actually a glandular-based system that it's one of the only exercises in the world that exercises the glands, and the glands in turn have an effect on the mind. And so, yeah, it's there's the postures, there's diet. We can go into any of these aspects increments that make up the yogic day.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. I think before we get into all the different aspects of yoga, what yoga has to offer and how it can really help you give the best care to your body and your mind. But it's also a spiritual practice, and I think that's, again, as being a personal trainer and health coach all these years, we always wonder why people have a problem, struggle sticking with a healthy diet and an exercise program and taking better care of their physical body, because I think there is a kind of people just don't, there's a disconnect between their physical and their spiritual self, which is really one and the same. And so I think when people realize that they are a spiritual being here, and they do have a divine purpose, and that's what yoga is all about, is helping us to connect with our true self, with God inside and our divine purpose. And when we do that, then that will help us, that'll motivate us to take better care of our physical body. So talk a little bit about what you really feel from a yoga perspective, what really is the meaning of life and the purpose of our life here on earth.
Sure, absolutely. So from the yogic ideal that there's life, the way to live on this planet is twofold. One, self-realization, and then two, service to others. And naturally, the more realized we become, the more scope we have to help other people because we have access to greater knowledge. And so from the spiritual perspective, it's the idea of discovering that mystical link that we have with the unseen cosmos around us. Okay, there's trees, there's plants, there's galaxies, there's nebula, but what about that undercurrent of consciousness that unites all these physical expressions? And that's the oneness that the yogis talk about. And that doesn't happen physically, it happens in the psycho-spiritual domain, where your I feeling gets linked up with a greater presence.
Yeah, absolutely. So however you want to think of the creative force of the universe, or what we call God, I believe, in the yoga philosophy and most spiritual teachings, is that we're part of that. God is inside, and we're part of that. And so when we talk about become self-realized, is that the realization you're talking about? Realizing that we are part of God too, and that we are here that we can do great things, and we can create a much more peaceful and prosperous world for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. That the masquerade is that we think we're something individual, something small. We all think that what our name is, what our profession is, but actually that's just a role that we're playing while we're on this planet, and that we're part of a greater source. And once we realize that, naturally our life will take on a whole new meaning and hopefully a more deeper and connected way of being on this earth, and seeing everyone else as also an expression of that divine source.
Yeah, it's really the feeling of being separate and being small and not worthy and being sinners and all those kind of things that just really have held us back from being expressing our true nature. And I think that's really the beauty of yoga, which has been around for thousands and thousands of years. And the ancient yogis, I mean, they already knew all these things, right? So that's why they developed this whole system. So talk a little bit more about the complete system of yoga and how it helps you live in your daily life.
Sure. So we can think of the yogic ideal as Ashtanga Yoga, which is 8 limbs of yoga. And within that, there are ways that we follow in our day-to-day manner that build up a very systematic way of living. So we can say one thing is our nourishment, our food, and that the food should be from a vibrant source. And the yogis advocate a plant-based diet. But that cellular regeneration that we get from food keeps the body youthful, vibrant, and mentally clear as well. There's a system of fasting where, and through periodic intervals, we refrain from taking food so that the body can do its housekeeping and do cellular regeneration that way, and we can actually flush the system. And that also helps promote wellness and longevity. Then there's the yoga postures that we do, the physical positions, which bring strength, flexibility, vibrancy. And people sometimes take that to be the totality of yoga. That's common in the West, but right. Actually that's an important part. It's the physical way to start to tap into your mental realm. It helps in that regard. Like, for instance, if someone is feeling very antsy or mentally stressed out, then doing physical yoga postures will help make them feel better physically, but it also calms the mind and prepares the mind for meditation. And so that brings us to meditation, which is another one of the mainstays of yogic life, of getting the mind focused, concentrated, clear, calm, and ultimately goaded towards some type of spiritual ideal in the meditation.
Yeah. Don't you agree that why meditation is so important? Because we live in this society and culture of so much overwhelm and so much distractions and so much stress, and people get so stressed out. And it's all these things, that's just in our mind, that we think they're so important and so either bad or good, and we're so concerned about all these things, and it's really keeping us from being healthy and physically and mentally. So by doing the postures, not only we get the benefit, the physical benefits, but it also is a way to calm the mind and to go deeper inside and to connect with our true self, which is our true nature is at peace and joy. Is that right?
Oh, yes, certainly, certainly. And meditation plays a very good role, very important role of calming the mind. And we have to remember that every time we think a thought, it sends off a chain reaction through the body, through a series of glandular secretions. And that's why if someone's feeling nervous, then it's not that they mentally feel nervous. They'll start to sweat, they'll start to shake, they'll start to tremor. It has an entire effect, a chain reaction throughout the body, just from that one singular thought. So if we can calm the mind and remove the stress or relieve it, and then that has a tremendous impact on one's health, on one's even just physical health, not to speak of mental health, but physical health. The heart is less stressed, all the entire nervous system. So yeah, it has a huge impact.
I talk about the breath, about our breathing. That's a major component of yoga, and why it's so important, and why we need to learn how to breathe better.
Yeah. The breath that's a very good aspect that the breath it's our very secret, special, sacred tool, because it links the physical body with the psychic and psycho-spiritual bodies. And the physical body is something very, very palpable. We can all find our big toe. We all know where our elbows are. And the breathing is a very physical function, but the unique aspect of it is that by breathing slowly, by learning special breathing techniques, then it actually starts to harness the mind. And that's the mind, which is invisible and otherwise quite elusive, starts to get lassoed in by the breath. And you can create a certain parallelism between your physical body and your mental body. And that parallelism brings a deep sense of peace. So the breath is an amazing tool.
Yeah, tell us about, give us one example of just one, maybe the basic way of breathing, a yoga breathing.
Sure, absolutely. Now, in the yogic system, the breath will flow in and out through the nostrils. So you breathe through the nasal passages, and you'll breathe all the way down into the low belly. The sternum and shoulders will remain immobile. The breath goes all the way down to the low belly. The lungs expand, and on the inhalation, some people find it counterintuitive, but the navel point goes out, and the lungs are full of air. And then on the exhale, known as rechak in Sanskrit, the navel point comes in towards the spine and evacuates the air from the body out through the nasal passages. So you've got your purak, your inhalation, and then slowly exhale. And one breath of that inhale, exhale, that deep breathing is enough to start to change the whole human structure, physically and psychically. And if we were to add one more step onto that, not to get too much into it, but if we add one more step, we could add a sense of pause known as kumbhak, which is in between the inhalation and the exhalation. So we all just, with the spine tall, you breathe down, breathe in, and then pause, retain the breath, and slowly exhale out. And that brings, it slows down the mind. And it's not just good for the mind. I mean, it enhances one's strength, one's overall vitality, one's ability to think, one's ability, all aspects. There's no drawback. There's only plus points in all the realms. So this kind of complete breath or yogic breath is extremely important.
Yeah, learning to breathe more, and just from the aspect of getting more oxygen into the body. Most fatigue and most pain in the body is due to lack of oxygen. So just learning to, as you showed us, to deep breathe, get more oxygen into your body is so important for our overall health. And And also, I think I'm sure you've probably heard this too. This is by concentrating on your breath, it really quiets your mind. And I'm sure you've heard this. Deepak Chopra says, if you want to know where you are, the real you, the higher self, it's in the space between your thoughts. So when you can quiet your thoughts, in between your thoughts, if you can quiet your mind, that's how you can connect to your higher self or your true self.
Yeah, absolutely. The yogis talk about going beneath the chitter chatter of the mind. You know, when very superficial is that there's a chitter chatter going on in the mind. And when that gets calmed, one can go deeper into that pool of consciousness that lies beneath that chitter chatter, that when the mind can get into its deeper states. And that's when really spiritual connection and that whole greater awareness of self starts to develop.
Yeah, it's so good, so beneficial. Well, tell us about, you've been a teacher trainer and you've been studying and teaching yoga for all these years. Tell some about some of the main benefits you have seen from yourself and for your students.
Sure. I mean, these days, yoga has become popular, and so we get a wide array of people coming into the classes or trying to practice. So someone who may be really not interested much in maybe mental clarity or spirituality, or they may not express that. Let me just say they may not express that. They may say, hey, look, I've got back pain, or I get chronic sciatica. And people come in for the practice and they get benefit from that physical, they get relief from their back pain, they get relief from their sciatica. But what they don't expect is that they also get a whole sense of psychic relief as well. And the people who came in with physical ailments now appreciate those benefits, but now really what keeps them coming back is the sense of psychic ease, the sense of peace, a sense of balance, of psychic balance. And that really is what keeps them coming to their practice, because they may not have back pain every day, but every day they need to calm that mind. And so we see this in such an array that people may lose weight, they may gain the ability to concentrate for longer periods of time. It really touches your physical realm, your psychic realm, your spiritual realm, all the aspects of life. And it's wonderful to see people flower in this way and get the benefits. And even people who've been coming for years, sometimes they say, I never really understood what you were talking about of this aspect of meditation. But one day something clicks in their practice and it becomes much more meaningful. And so it's very beautiful to see, and people do get the benefits on day one. They start getting the benefits.
Yeah, I talk a little bit about some of the aspects of how this whole yoga lifestyle can affect aging and also longevity.
Oh, sure. Well, anything that's stressed out is going to peter out quickly. If you run a machine, if you run any type of tool to its breaking point, till it's going to disintegrate. It's going to, and the physical body is the same way. It needs nurturing. It needs cultivation. And by the yogic lifestyle of a healthy diet, eating the proper foods, not eating those foods that make us feel sluggish or contribute to atherosclerosis, or here we're talking a lot about the animal-based diet that's been so prevalent in the West the last 50 or 60 years. But those types of foods that help revitalize the system, that goes a long way to one's longevity. And there's no shortage of studies these days that you can read about that. And I think you've hosted talks and videos with some of the forerunners in that field of nutrition. So I won't talk too much on it. But then there's the system I talked about earlier, a little bit about fasting, that every system in the world needs to be flushed, right? With the engine on the car, every system needs to be flushed, and the digestive system is the same. And by not putting more and more food on top of undigested food that really overruns the system, it allows a sense of clearing and a sense of lightness. And when the body is not bogged down, all the organs and all the main functioning systems of the body will work at an optimal level. They won't be constantly overrun by too much food. That's extremely helpful. Then the asanas bring lightness to the body and vitality and a sense of gentleness to the body. Then the yogis say that a natural lifespan for a human being is 120 years. Right. And that's not being connected to tubes. They mean a normal, functioning human life. And we see that as people take on more mindful practices and are more careful in the regulation of their lifestyle, then we're seeing the lifespan extend. We've seen it the last 50 years, and we're going to see it more as we become more mind-oriented, more aware of ourselves. Then that has a tremendous impact. Meditation is, obviously it's going to be a big source. If we're not thinking thoughts that bog us down, that weigh us down, negative thoughts, stressful thoughts, then the heart rate will calm down, the respiratory rate will slow down, and then the body's working at an optimal rate, and it can maintain itself in a beautiful way rather than redlining it. Just like if you redline the car engine, you're going to blow a valve. And people redline it in their physical lives, and they get a heart attack. All these things are all highly preventable, and the yogic lifestyle is well suited to that, to live a life of restraint, of regulation, of deep joy. So by our food, by our fasting, by our meditation, by our asana practice, by living a moral life, there's bathing. Bathing is not using cool water when we bathe. It helps revitalize the cells. There's lots and lots of little things that, big and small things that help in increasing one's longevity and vitality.
Really well said, Satyam. One thing I find is it's very interesting. As all this yoga philosophy and teachings have been around for thousands of years, and they already knew all these things, how it was good for us, and now science is catching up. On that same thing of aging. Science now tells us that our genetic potential is to stay healthy till at least 125. And it's so interesting how science is catching up with spirituality, and they're becoming to blend together. So that's really a fascinating thing. Well, I have a question for you. You spent time in India and you studied in India. Did you see that a lot of the advanced yogis, they do stay pretty healthy and they live a really long life?
Yeah, absolutely. They can live, they maintain, there's almost very little physical degeneration. They can maintain their bodies for a long time. There's no question. And if you don't mind, I'd like to pick up a little bit on what you were just saying previously, how fascinating it is that the yogis, they got the idea, and now we're seeing this blending of Eastern intuitional science and Western material science. And the interesting thing is the yogis did not follow the scientific method. They used intuition to get to the conclusion first. And they never connected all the dots along the way, but they knew inherently those things were good. And it's very interesting that now all those ideas they had are being corroborated by Western medical science. And it's a very beautiful combination that's going on. They came to the conclusion first, and now it's being corroborated by Western medical science. And the other interesting thing is that Western medical science has never undone any yogic teaching. They may not agree with it yet. They may not have explored or tested it yet, but they haven't proven it wrong. Rather, it constantly, perpetually substantiates what their initial conclusions were that they achieved through intuitional science. And now back to your present question, the yogis live long lives. They the yogis say that the body is a state of generation until the age of 39, and then slowly, slowly, slowly. But that slowness is almost imperceptible from decade to decade to decade. They can maintain. And the other thing is they maintain a crystal clear clarity of mind, and which okay, even at 100, naturally there's going to be a little bit of loss of muscle mass. I mean, people, that's going to happen physically, but there'll be no degeneration in the psycho-spiritual sphere, because that you don't age in that realm. And so you've got a crystal, you're looking into someone's eyes and you feel like the whole universe is contained in those eyes, and they've got their memory recall, their vitality, their psycho-spiritual energy is tremendous. And because there's no degeneration at all. Their brain is connected to their mind. And so all those degenerative brain diseases like Alzheimer's and all those horrific things that are scary, they don't exist with the yogic mind. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, really well said. Yeah, I think the main message here is that so many things, so many ailments and chronic diseases and degenerations and premature aging that we're experiencing, well, all over the world, but here, especially in the West and in the United States, it may be normal, but it's not natural. And we don't have to just accept that there are ways. And again, that's the whole point of this whole project, this whole self-care guide, is to give you all the different ideas and concepts and things that we know that can work and that can help you to take the best care of your mind and your body, and to advance yourself spiritually. And of course, the whole overall yoga philosophy that you know and teach is one of the best ways. And I highly recommend that you begin to incorporate, some aspects of yoga into your life. So that leads me to the next question. And then, for someone who hasn't experienced anything in yoga at all, but has some interest now, how would you recommend a person begin to introduce themselves into the yoga lifestyle?
Oh yeah, wonderful. The great thing about these days, it's no longer something esoteric that you had to hike up to the Himalayas to start.
Right.
It's very palpable. You can use the internet. If you want to learn about the yogic diet, you can Google that. I mean, a lot of stuff you can self-start on your own. There's countless videos, there's teachers, there's just a lot of resources available, whether you want to study individually by yourself, or if you'd like to connect with a class, either at your workplace or after work or at your school, or if you'd like to join an actual spiritual path where you might meet a yogic monk or yogic nun. I mean, there's just a lot of resources, and one can enter in at any level or any aspect they wish, either for stress relief or for weight loss or for spiritual intent. So there's really lots of ways, and if anyone is really stuck, they're welcome to contact me, and I can help them and go them in the right direction, hopefully.
Yeah, very good. Well, in fact, that leads me right into what I was going to say next anyway, is that, to remind all of our viewers is that along with this video training, there's a PDF that comes along with it that has all the contact information for Satyam. You can go to his website, Renaissance Yoga, renyoga.com, and he has lots of information about yoga, all different aspects of it. He also has, classes you can take. There's online classes. There's no concern about how am I going to learn and find out about this. So we highly recommend that you really connect with all of our experts, because as I promise you that these are the people that really are giving you the right information, and they really care about you and your health. And so, you definitely want to connect and see what Satyam has to offer there, so you can learn a lot about what they have to offer. You can take classes. You can even become a teacher if you wanted to from his website. So we highly recommend you check that out. So Satyam, that was so good. I really appreciate that. Really great information and all the work that you do. And so the very last question I always ask all my experts to come up with, it's the hardest one to answer. But what it is that what ideas do you have for people that maybe will inspire them and motivate them to take action on this? A lot of people will say, that sounds interesting, maybe I should do some of that, but then they don't actually do it, So So what words can you say that maybe will inspire people to just take the first step and give it a try and begin to take some action on some of your recommendations?
In a word, I would say empowerment. These days, people do so much in the material sphere to empower themselves, often enough chasing after money or prestige or those things. But the greatest tool we have to really truly empower ourselves is to awaken ourselves to a healthy lifestyle, a proper mode of thinking, meditation. These things will enhance every aspect of your life. You will feel fully and it'll be in self-perpetuating and inspiring. So if you want to empower yourself and improve relations with your family, and really tap into your potential, and we're not talking about a payback 5 years down the road. We're talking if you start today, you get the benefits today, and you realize that. Then your road forward is limitless. And so I'd say empowerment. It's a great way. It doesn't cost anything. It's just making right choices, smart choices, conscientious choices, and learning a little bit about more who you are and what your relation is with the world around you. So it's a tool of empowerment, and I see no drawbacks. The moment you start, you get the benefits.
Really well said. So the message is here, if you want to look and feel better, you want to have better health, you want to make a bigger difference in this world, you want to be better able to take care of your family, you need to take care of yourself mentally and physically and spiritually. And the yoga lifestyle is one that can greatly aid you in that. So both Tommy and I, we both recommend that you give it a try. You just got to just take the first step and see what you can experience. And I think you'll be really glad that you did. So thanks very much for being here. Thanks a lot, Satyam. That was so good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today, Rico. Thank you.